Hello, welcome to Learn, Do, Become Radio. I'm April Perry, and today we're talking a little bit more about current projects, building on what we discussed in episode 182 about editing our current projects. So a comment came in with some great questions, and I'm going to dive in and answer those today, and hopefully this will give you a little lift and help clear your mind and help you feel more focused with your projects. If you're brand new, here at Learn, Do, Become, we help people who are drowning in the details of life to create simple systems so they can do what matters most. We really want you to have a calm life and an organized environment and a strong family, strong relationships, and be able to live your purpose. And if you want that and you feel like you're juggling so much and it's driving you crazy, then stay close because we're here to support you. And just a little side note, a huge thank you to all of the kind emails and comments on our last podcast, 183. That was where I shared, it was my somewhat painful but life-changing experience going through some therapy, which was really helpful. And that was the podcast I was so nervous about publishing. Like I waited till the last minute and pressed publish, and I knew, people might make fun of me or whatever, but actually no one has. Everyone has been very understanding and kind and actually could relate. And it's so helpful to know that we have an amazing community out there, that we're all trying to work together, as different as we are. We're trying to support one another. So thank you. Now, as I talk about current projects, if you're brand new to the idea of a Command Central, our program Steps to Everyday Productivity, our STEP program, talks about building a whole system where we know what to focus on daily, weekly, and as needed. The inspiration for this was the book Getting Things Done by David Allen, and I took it and made it a little bit more visual and step-by-step and really family-centered. And so that's what STEP is. So we have a free training for people who are brand new. It's called How to Finally Stop Drowning in Piles. That's at learndobecome.com/step. Otherwise, if you are kind of familiar and you've been listening to the podcast for a while or watching videos on our YouTube channel or getting our emails, then today will make sense for you. It's just today is a little bit of a higher level class. Like it's not 101, it's maybe a 301 level class. So I just don't want anyone to think, what are you talking about? But the comment that came in was from Shayla, and she had so many very specific questions that were just so well articulated. I thought, I just need to make this a podcast because I know other people have the same questions. And she said, go ahead, if you want to make this podcast, you can use anything I wrote. So here we go. All right. So the goal is to have a simple, focused list of projects for the month. And typically I say a maximum of 7 or 8. And these are divided into projects for me, my family, and beyond. Beyond includes professional work and volunteer work. But what happens when we have a lot of little small projects, How can we accurately see what we have done this month? Especially if we find we're working on hidden projects we don't actually put on the list, but they're still multi-step and what counts. There's kind of this ambiguity. So there are a lot of subtleties to this, and while there isn't one right way, I'm going to share how I personally look at project selection and the management of smaller projects. And I hope this is helpful for you. Basically what I did is I took Shayla's comment, which you can see if you go back to episode 182, and it's just there in the comments. I took that and then I created just a principle that I could teach for each of her paragraphs. So that's what I'm doing, and I'll give the examples here. All right, so let's jump in. Principle number 1. If your life typically includes several smaller multi-step tasks, it's helpful to reduce the number of bigger projects that you place on your current projects list. So I think of it like, think of it as a balance, right? Where if you have hardly any, little tiny multi-step projects, then you could put more current projects on there, more big projects, kind of like routines. If your life is just full of routines, you don't want a lot of big current projects because you probably don't have a lot of project time. So you're going to look at the amount of time that you have available to do projects, and then you're going to match your current projects list to that. And this is kind of an eye-opener for a lot of people because typically we create a current projects list based on where we feel lack in our lives. And even if we have no time to do projects, if we feel we're lacking a lot, we just put a ton of stuff on our list because it feels better to think, okay, I'm going to solve it. The problem is something I'm sure you're very familiar with. When you have a huge list of things that you're planning to accomplish and then you have no time to do it, you just carry stress. And then you don't get anything done. And then you beat yourself up. And then you wonder what's wrong with you. And then you create another big list. And you go in this cycle. That's what I want to put an end to because it's not healthy, okay? I also don't want to spend a lot of time editing my current projects list. I put mine on a chalkboard. I also put it in Asana, ASANA for project management. And I write my current projects list on my compass card or my prioritized task list card that I keep in my planner. So I have my projects written in several places. I'm not looking to erase the chalkboard and redo it, 3 times a week. I maybe update it or edit it once or twice a month, maybe twice a month. But it's kind of a big deal for me to edit my current projects list. I like that to feel really solid. So that's why I want you to think about this current projects list as the big rocks, your big focus that you're working on. Now, even 1 to 3 current projects can be sufficient. My projects usually span the whole month, and they can each take between 3 or even 20 plus hours to complete. It just depends on the project. So some of them, if it's establishing a routine, that's going to take, the whole month as I'm working on it. Some of them, if it's planning one event, it might just take 5 hours, and I can space that out. So here's what Shayla shared as an example. She said, we had a cozy gift exchange in an online community I'm in. It wasn't planned at the beginning of the month, but I'm not sure it's big enough to actually be a project. It did take a chunk of my Saturday that would have been designated otherwise. It involved ordering an item, going to the store to pick up another, packaging and writing a note, and going to the post office to mail. Something that could all be listed under individual errands and checked off. Or should this be thought of as a project? Then I debate, do I really want this to count as one of my 8? Okay, so in that case, I would recognize in my mind that I am choosing to put my energy into this multi-step task. And I would reduce my expectations around other projects or routines. But I personally would just use my calendar and next actions list to manage these things. So if the main issue, however, is the need to validate the way you're spending your time, or you need to see a visual representation of what you have accomplished, then you could definitely write this on a happy success list. This is something that Danielle Porter, she was on Team Learn to Become for several years. She wrote this post talking about this happy success list. She recorded all these things that she did, even if they weren't planned, prior. So that was super cute. I'll put a link to that on the show notes page. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. If you're just thinking, what counts? Just really look at these small multi-step tasks and the projects and figure out how to best balance. But my personal view is just use your calendar or next actions list in order to manage those tasks. All right, principle number 2. Utilize the routines list for anything that's done over and over. So here's Shayla's example. My son's Cub Scouts needs to use our neighborhood clubhouse as a meeting spot each week. So I am the one responsible for booking each of these, which I have to complete an online form for each date, which is about 15 different ones, okay? Is this a project or just a task? I've already completed the portion of paying for and dropping off the check, etc. Those were errands a previous week. Now, from what I read, it sounds like you have to fill out the form each week, like maybe it reopens. So if that's the case, I would create a recurring task in Asana, or if you use paper planning resources, you could go to Google Calendar and make a recurring reminder. And then when it comes in, you just add it to your planner, reminding me to fill out the form. And then I'd put the form link right there in the task or the calendar event so I wouldn't have to go looking for it. Now, if a routine isn't absolutely done every single week, like let's say you were in charge of booking this clubhouse occasionally and they updated a calendar once a month telling you when the dates were. Okay, then you could create a routine to check that, calendar and check to see if you need to schedule it each week. So you're going to create routines that will just make sure that your brain can relax. Now, if in this case you have to book the 15 different dates on the clubhouse and you can do it all at the same time, then I would probably just block out some time on the calendar, or I would write it down like, okay, Friday, I've got some open time. I'm just going to write it as a flexible task for Friday and just go get it done. I wouldn't think of it as a big project. Usually when I look at the projects on my current projects list, they have multiple facets. So it's, all different contexts. Oh, I got to do a discussion thing and an errand thing and a computer thing, and then I need to do some recording or whatever. And so I would probably just keep that on the routines list if it's a routine, or just make that a task. All right, principle number 3. If life gets temporarily busy, either because of something happy or something hard, you can either keep your current projects list as is, but mentally put it on pause, or you can make the list smaller by moving one or more of the projects into next in line. So here's the example that Shayla shared. It says, another thing I struggle with determining is when do events or connection opportunities change to a project? Again, for me, it's more about budgeting my time so I'm not giving myself 7 to 8 projects plus all these other things. And I like that she's doing this because she doesn't want to be overwhelmed, which is awesome. That's the goal. But I also want to keep them separate if they need to be. So for example, this month I had a couple of opportunities that popped up to help a friend and keep her kids for the afternoon and take them to some fun things. I don't consider this a project. I consider it a connection/social thing on my Create My Week. But there's a big chunk of time, planning, etc. going on. And so when editing my projects, I want to keep record in a way so I see why maybe something else didn't get as much focus as I wanted. So I do think this is really wise because she's recognizing if I have a bunch of stuff on my current projects list, but then I decide to shift my focus to take advantage of opportunities, what do I do so that I resolve it in my mind why I didn't get things done? But what do I need to shift around? So if the events that ended up as your priority will take more than a few days, or if your mental bandwidth is suffering because of it, then I would add it to your current projects list so you do have it as a visual representation of where your focus belongs. And I would move something else into next in line because remember, we don't add more and more things onto the current projects list. If something is added and we're exceeding our capacity, we have to take something off and move it to next in line. But if I move it to next in line, I could add a calendar trigger to potentially move it back in a few days if I think, well, I don't want to forget about it or I don't want to throw it into a black hole. Then that's what I'd recommend. So for example, if I were to get sick, let's say I've got the stomach flu and I am not going to be doing anything for a couple days. If I want to just mentally say, hey, I'm just pausing, I look at my current projects list and say, yeah, they can always wait till I feel better. Let's not stress about it. Fine. But if just seeing it on my current projects list is weighing on me for some reason, I literally go and I erase my current projects board and I write, get well soon, April. And I take all those current projects and I put them on next in line. And then I set a little calendar trigger a couple days into the future, maybe 3 days into the future, and say, review my projects and update my list. So that way I can just rest because my mind knows that everything is safe. In our recent 4 weeks to finished call, we had someone come on who said some catastrophe just hit. She didn't say what it was, but she said, I'm really stressed because it's going to take a few days and I don't know what to do with my current projects list. And I feel like I'm just kind of wasting my time. And what am I doing? And we all could completely relate because we feel that way when something, really hard comes. And what I told her is that is exactly why the Command Central is so helpful. Because when a catastrophe does come, you use the Command Central to help you focus on it. So you can add that catastrophe to your current projects list and move all of the other things into next in line, or just a few of them, if you can still manage to do a couple other things. And then that is visually your focus. And then in your mind, okay, when this is done, I'm going to move it to finished and I'm going to go find my next one. But it sounds like, well, why does it really matter? Just do what you need to do. And if that works for you, fine. But what I find for most people is they feel scattered. At least I do. And so if I know I can focus 100%, it just helps me worry less. It keeps my brain thinking in a forward fashion, right? It keeps me from dwelling on all the stuff I'm not doing, even subconsciously. When you look at a long list of things you're not doing, that can feel really stressful, especially if you've given yourself deadlines that you can't meet. And most of us are working along our own deadlines. We've made the choices to take on certain responsibilities or, obligate ourselves to certain things. So when we put that pressure on ourselves, that's what often makes us sick. So I'm just giving you some ideas so that if you're right now in a catastrophe, or it's a happy celebration, like you're helping someone with their kids and doing something fun. Or what if you win a free trip somewhere and you can't wait to go and you're going to be hanging out on the beach? Fantastic. I want you to enjoy that, or I want you to focus on what needs you, and then know that your brain can be calm. Principle number 4, setting up a routine is a project, but then the routines list will support you from there. So here's Shayla's example. I have 2 different weekly women's groups and we are completing a Bible study. Do I list this under my spiritual connection / social connection and not as a project, or is it all 3? So if you're figuring out where you're going to meet for this study and what you're actually going to study, like what the lessons are, and you're figuring out how often or who's invited, etc., then that's a project if you're the one in charge. Otherwise, I would just add this to my routines list, and then during the Create My Week, which we talked about that during the podcast back in December, create your year, month, week, and day. So as I'm creating my week, I would look at these events on my calendar and recognize I already have some great social and spiritual activities planned. So I would then pay closer attention to my private spiritual study and my exercise and nutrition and my family-focused activities, etc., during my weekly and daily creation. So when you have really good routines in place, let's say you've already established an awesome exercise routine and an awesome nutrition routine, and you've just got it locked in, then as you're creating your week, you might not need to put as much emphasis on that, and you put more emphasis on the areas where you really haven't thought things out, or where you feel like you could use a little bit more, balance. All right, let's go now to principle number 5. When a task is being procrastinated, it may be a project in disguise. So here's her example. I need to get my son scheduled for some counseling. I've had this on my next actions to make the calls and have made several, but have been stopped by one obstacle or another. So is this just something I need to dedicate an hour to making various phone calls and hopefully check it off as a task, or is this a project? Now, if this will take an hour or so, it doesn't really sound like one task. If you already have the phone number and you already know if your insurance will or won't cover it, and you know exactly what to say to the receptionist, and you can just make the call, it's one call, then I would say that's a task. But if you need to do research and talk with a partner or spouse about something, or take some time to make a decision or sort through emotions, etc., that's what I would call a project. And especially if I am procrastinating it, I would put it on my current projects list in the family section, because then even if it gets done quickly, and I can just move other things onto my list, it helps me to give it the focus it deserves. So I would just pay attention to that. Something simple like what we talked about up earlier, like, oh, I'm buying a gift and mailing it. Yeah, that kind of thing. I would just use my calendar and next actions list and just kind of move it forward. But something I'm procrastinating, especially when it involves something like getting a son scheduled for counseling, there's a lot more in there. And I would say there's a lot more mental work and emotional work. And so that kind of thing, I would say, yeah, put that on your current projects list for as long as it needs to be on there. Principle 6, some multi-step tasks do need time blocked on the calendar when we're committed to diving in and getting it done. And this can apply to what we talked about in number 5 as well. But here's the example that I'm going to use from Shayla's comment. She said, along the same lines, I need to write a letter to my insurance company about some information I received from an agent regarding durable medical equipment and getting pre-authorization from my doctor, only to go get the item and find out it's never covered by my insurance anyway. Oh man, we've been through all that. Okay, so she says, how do I categorize this letter, right? Figuring it all out, trying to get this covered. So dealing with health insurance is actually my least favorite activity. Honestly, if anyone listening has any pull in the medical billing and all of that, please help us all because literally 80% of the time I have to deal with something medical. There's a mistake or an issue or something was put in wrong, or I have to ask for a credit, or there's something. It's really frustrating, especially when you're sick and you're doing it and you're already not feeling well and then you have to dive in. Sometimes Eric's just said, April, get off the phone and stop talking because I'm just ready to cry. I have been crying to the billing office, like, will you guys stop doing this to me? I can't sit here on the phone for an hour. Anyway, I sometimes I get emotional about that. So I'm just letting you know I completely empathize. Okay, so if you want this particular thing to be a current project, then you can absolutely do that. There may be just some really simple next actions you can then just pull out and add to your next actions list and just make it feel smaller and just work on it throughout the month. And that's a completely valid way to do it. I find that I want to put these kinds of things off because they frustrate me so much. I mean, I won't rant, but I've had so many discussions where just the logic of what they're doing makes so little sense to me that I'm like trying to solve the whole problem with the poor person on the phone who had no control over it. So yeah, the worst of me comes out when I'm on these calls. I'll just say that. Okay, so I typically just block out my calendar and say, I'm just going to do this Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m. or something. And then I protect that appointment like I would a doctor appointment. I just dive in and just get it done because it's kind of like having a tooth pulled, right? Now, we don't want to have to depend on willpower at any stage of our organization. That's the whole reason I'm so excited about a Step Command Central on every desk, because when you're able to break things down and you're able to work really smoothly and seamlessly with projects, routines, tasks, calendar items, and it's just a nice flow, you don't need willpower to get anything done. It's just very natural and it feels very doable. However, if some tasks feel really stressful, then calendaring those tasks may take that mental pressure off because you're just going to say, you know what, I'm just going to do it at this time. And then you just do it. Okay, I hope all this has been helpful. Shayla added, putting your principles in place is definitely helping me move forward on things, and I have definitely gained traction. I just want to keep refining the process to make it work the best it can. So I love that. Thank you, Shayla. And thank you for all of you for being here. I know as we talk about these little random tasks, it almost seems like, so boring. Why are we talking about calendars and projects and routines? But as you can tell, just hearing Shayla's examples, these are the kinds of things that just keep the world going, setting up the events, doing the mailing of things, coordinating counselor visits, getting your work done. These are just the steps that make up our lives. And so many times it's draining your energy just to get basic stuff done. Like I remember I wrote down pay a bill, 30 times. I just kept rewriting it day after day after day because I didn't want to do it. Why did I want to do it? I don't know. Getting a checkbook just felt stressful. Now I don't even use a checkbook very often. But like it was stuff like that where if you can just learn how to do it so simply and take care of these little tasks, well, now you're going to rest more. You're going to enjoy your family more. You're going to be able to meditate and pray and think and breathe and set goals and read more and create and wake up excited and go to bed content. And that's what I want for you. So a couple announcements with our programs. We have a special STEP bonus class for all STEP Mastery members in March. I'm actually going to be teaching how to use Asana to manage personal and professional tasks. So we're going to go deep into how would you do this if you're trying to manage all the stuff at work and your personal things. Like, what would you do? And so I'm going to take you inside Asana and just show you how to do that. And that's going to happen in March. I'm not sure the date yet, but anyone who joins Step Mastery by the end of March will have lifetime access to that. Okay? So if you're looking for a reason to become a stepper, come on in. We'd love to see you there. I'll have a link on the show notes page. And then inside Arise is our monthly membership. This is where Eric and I work with our amazing community of Arisers, and we apply what we learn in STEP. How do you take this Command Central and now create the life that you can't wait to wake up and live? And this life architecture is what we're super excited about. And in March, it's Thursday, March 16th, my personal coach / therapist, Mike Christensen, who is certified in team cognitive behavioral therapy that I talked about last week, he's coming to help facilitate a discussion and teach our risers how to work through a mood log, how to identify self-defeating beliefs and get to the root. He's so good and he's so kind, and I can't wait for you to meet him. I really think it's going to be helpful for you. So if you want to come into Arise, that's learndobecome.com/arise. We have really fun, powerful discussions every month. We give you recordings. We give you all the things that you need so that you can kind of get the best research from all the Arisers and put it all together. Kind of have a leg up, right? So it's going to help you feel more excited. Okay, sending a big hug. I love you guys so much. Thanks for being my friends. Seriously, my podcast friends are like my best friends. I love it. I love being able to just be here with you and hopefully just encourage you because you're doing so much good. And I don't think you often see how much good you're doing. But if I can encourage you and help make these details just flow a little easier, it means a lot to me. And that helps me live my purpose by helping you live your purpose. Okay, take care. We'll see you soon at learndobecome.com.